Hey guys, welcome back to the Glory Living channel. My name is Hannah, and today we are talking seeds. Heirloom, GMO, hybrid. What do those terms mean? What do they mean for you? Do they affect you? Do they affect your garden? I want to talk to you about that today so you can plan a garden that is going to be best suited for you and your family, and that you can feel comfortable and informed and educated in making that decision. Okay guys, let's go check it out. If you are even remotely interested in gardening, then most likely you have heard at least some of the terms that I just said about heirloom, hybrid, and GMO. Almost everybody has heard of GMO seeds, foods, plants, whatever, and I want to inform you about that because I think a lot of people are trying to be more self-sufficient or are trying to get into gardening just because they want to, interested, hobby, and some people really want to produce more of their own food. And so some of these terms can get floated around, people can get confused, they hear a little bit of knowledge just to kind of get them mixed up. And I want to go through that today. I want to talk about it with you today because honestly, I don't want anybody to be fear-mongered, but I also want everybody to be informed. So I want to talk about all these so that you can feel comfortable and informed knowing what you're planting, what you're eating, what you're doing, and maybe that'll just help you a little bit in planning out what you're going to do with your garden. I recently did a video about garden planning, and I talked a little bit about places that I like to get seeds from, like Baker Creek that does heirloom seeds, or Johnny Select Seeds that has heirloom but also has a lot of great hybrid seeds. And I wanted to also do a video discussing the differences in those types of seeds so that you can make decisions for yourself and for your garden that best suit your needs and really clear the air on what a hybrid seed even is, because I think people get confused by that. So I want to start by defining what is an heirloom versus what is a hybrid, and then get into the benefits of both or the disadvantages of either one, and just kind of inform you, because I think, like I said, I think there's confusion, I think there can be a little bit of misinformation out there, and I just want you to feel comfortable in what you're planting and just be really kind of empowered by some of this information and knowledge. Okay, so let's start with heirloom. What in the world is an heirloom seed? Baker Creek specializes, as you can see there, in heirloom seeds. Other places like Seed Savers do as well. I know there's tons more out there. And it's a great gift to us that there are people who are dedicated to preserving heirloom varieties. What is an heirloom variety? An heirloom variety is a variety that has been grown historically for a long, long time. And it is steady and consistent. And if you plant an heirloom seed, it is a pure seed. You're going to continue to get that same product year after year after year. You have heirloom tomatoes, like the Cherokee purple tomatoes. You're going to plant Cherokee purple tomatoes, and when you save those seeds, and you replant them the next year, you're still going to get Cherokee purple tomatoes. Heirloom seeds are just historic seeds that have been growing for decades that are a consistent and pure variety. And we're going to show you in contrast to what that is with a hybrid variety. When I use the term pure, I'm not trying to say that hybrids are impure in any type of negative sense. What I just mean is that this is a variety that has been grown for so long and it is genetically steady. You're going to continue to save those seeds and continue to get the same heirloom variety, assuming you have not cross-pollinated them with another variety, which we're going to talk about very soon when we get into hybrids. It's just an old variety that has history behind it and that has been steadily grown for years, usually isolated to continue getting that same variety year after year. That's what an heirloom variety is. So let's define what a hybrid variety is. A hybrid variety is a variety of a plant, vegetable, fruit, whatever, that has been cross-pollinated with other varieties. So all that would mean is you took two varieties of tomatoes, you cross-pollinated them, and whatever you got, that produced tomato of the next year that you would plant, that would be a hybrid tomato. Okay, that's all that the hybrid means. So let's get into a little bit of the myths and the misinformation that go on about hybrid varieties. Okay, so just because something is hybrid does not mean that it is GMO, okay? I want to show you and tell you and try and give you an analogy for the difference between a hybrid versus a GMO seed. The difference would be like comparing this, okay? One, hybrids are cross-pollinated naturally, where GMOs are genetically changed in a lab. Okay, so this is the difference. If you had livestock, let's say you were keeping pigs. If you've ever heard of a term, culling the herd. To cull the herd is to take out pretty much any type of any of the animals, that their demeanor, their temperament, whether they're healthy or not. Okay, and so if you would, culling the herd would be to remove those animals from your herd to not reproduce with that type of demeanor, temperament, sickness, okay? What that means is the hybrid concept would be kind of like taking, okay, two different varieties of pigs and trying to reproduce them so that you could get a benefit of both varieties. So if you had a female type of pig, one variety that had a great temperament and was very healthy, but you had another male pig that was very healthy and a great temperament, and maybe combining those, you wanted a really good temperament pig reproducing with a pig that has a lot of fat on it, or whatever the case may be, whatever results you want. You have varieties where you're cross breeding them to try and get the best of both worlds. You know, when you have livestock, different varieties have different temperaments. You have even chickens. You have chickens that are going to be more pet-like, very more relational to say. And then there are chickens that are less relational, but man, they're really good layers or whatever. And if you wanted to try and combine breeds to get maybe a chicken that was kind, breeding with a chicken that was a really good layer, and see if you could get the best of both worlds, that's kind of like what they're doing with hybrids with vegetables. And it's not being done in any unnatural way. It's taking two pigs or two chickens, you know, a chicken and a rooster, or two different breeds of cows, and trying to breed those two varieties together to see if you can get the good genes in both that you like, whether that's a different type of marbling in the meat, whether that's good egg layers, whether that's also better temperaments, and trying to combine those breeds to get something and get the best of both worlds and get an even improved breed, okay? And nothing unnatural is happening. That's what they do with varieties of vegetables. They'll take maybe a variety of tomato that has good disease resistance, combined with a tomato that has good flavor, and try and combine those together and see if you can get disease resistant and that good flavor, or crack resistant or whatever. And they're just cross-pollinating these plants in order to try and improve the genetics and abilities to make them more disease resistant, to make them higher producing, to get good flavors. That's what they're doing, and it's all happening in a natural setting of cross-pollination. On the contrary, what is a GMO then? There are people who will say, for different reasons and different motivations, will say and act as though hybrid and GMO are like synonymous. They are not. The analogy for animals that I would give is the difference between a GMO versus a hybrid would be like taking those animals, and instead of breeding them, you took them into a laboratory. Then you did some type of science on them to genetically change them. That you did something in a lab to actually change and mess with the genes of those pigs. Instead of crossbreeding, you just wanted to change the actual genetics and DNA to have a better temperament, to have a better taste or whatever. And that's what a GMO seed is. I think at very best, to mess with DNA is naive. At best, it's naive to think that you can change one thing in a gene and not have any consequences for that to lead towards other issues. Mostly GMO seeds, they're being changed genetically so that they are resistant to the herbicides that they're spraying on them. I'm not saying that's the only thing that GMO seeds do. I'm just saying it's not maybe as pure of a reason, and it's not being done in a natural process. I'm really not personally very interested in messing around with anything that is messing around with DNA. I think that, like I said, at best, we should call that naive. You know, at worst, we could use other words. But I just don't think it's very wise, and I do think it's a little naive to think that you can that it's a naive view of DNA. I think most of us view DNA and genetics like Punnett squares from the 8th grade. It's way more complex than that, and DNA is so layered. Genes are not just like only going to affect only ever one thing. So I think we just need to be more aware of that, and I want to define the difference between GMO and hybrid. I'm not trying to get into like a huge science lesson or act like I'm some pro in genetics. I am not. But what I do know about genetics, and the admission of not being a pro, is that it's way more complicated than most people want to even talk about or even understand that it is. So in summary, the difference would be between natural breeding to try and get a better outcome from a variety or a breed versus bringing something into a lab and scientifically and manually from a human changing DNA and genetics inside a variety to get what you want out of it. And that is the difference between the hybrids and the GMO. You can have a hybrid that is absolutely not at all GMO. It was just cross-pollinated, which is, guys, something that can happen in your garden. You can produce hybrid varieties. And so I think people sometimes are scared of hybrids and don't want anything to do with them, and I just want to inform you, they're not GMO seeds. So please, please, do not be afraid to grow hybrid seeds. And that leads me into another reason why people don't want to grow them that I want to talk about that's also, I think, a confusion. One of the confusions about hybrid seeds that people will say, and they may not mean anything bad by it, but it's not a good way of phrasing it. They'll say something like this: well, you can't save seeds from hybrid varieties. That's not true. That is not exact. They may mean one thing, but it does not mean what it sounds like. And let me explain. When you save an heirloom seed, assuming you have not cross-pollinated it, you're going to get the same variety year after year after year. Hybrids are cross-pollinated. So if you bought hybrid seeds and you planted those in your garden and you grew them and you took your hybrid pepper and you cut it open and you took those seeds and you saved them, the next year, when you go to plant those seeds, you are not going to get the same exact hybrid pepper that you grew last year. You're most likely going to get some other mix of its like mother or father, one of the two varieties that it was. And then if you save the seeds again, you'll probably get something even different the year after that. You're not going to get the same exact hybrid because that had to be grown and cross-pollinated with certain varieties to get that specific hybrid plant. Here's the thing though, you're still going to get a pepper. It just may not look like the same pepper you grew the year before. And you'll still get a tomato, it just is not going to look like the hybrid tomato that you grew the year before. And so, in fact, some people do this for fun, just to see what they get. That's interesting and cool, it's not a big deal. Just know that's what it is. Don't be afraid that you're not going to be able to grow peppers next year if you had hybrids. You're just not going to know what you're going to get. And that's a reason enough not to maybe want to do it, and so I understand why people don't. But there are benefits to hybrids, which we are going to talk about. Just know that it's not as though that seed is unable to produce more plants. It's just unable to produce the same exact one you had because it's not being cross-pollinated again. And so that's why hybrids, you can't save the seeds in the sense that you can an heirloom, but you can save the seeds and still get food the next year. The benefit of the heirloom is that you know what you're going to get. The con of the hybrid is that you don't. But there are benefits. And so I do want to get into what are the benefits of heirloom versus hybrid. Okay, let's start with heirloom. One of the benefits of heirloom is typically they have a better flavor, that they're just this robust, fuller flavor, especially when you're talking about tomatoes. Just really, really nice flavors that you can get from those, as well as other benefits are, like I said, you can continue to save those seeds and consistently know what you're going to get the next year, assuming you did not cross-pollinate with another variety. The other benefit, and this is not so much for your mouth or your shelves as much as it is for your mind, but there's history that goes with heirloom, and that's kind of cool to think that you're growing a tomato that historically other people have grown, and that can be kind of cool and kind of beautiful to me. If you're kind of a poetic person, you might enjoy that, but it's not necessary. Obviously, that's more of it sounds silly to say an emotional side of gardening, but it's cool. And so I appreciate heirloom varieties. And honestly, I'm always going to have heirloom varieties in my garden. Always, always, always am I going to have heirloom varieties. And so I'm definitely a proponent of heirloom, but there are some things that are cons to heirloom that we're going to talk about are actually the pros to hybrid. So the benefits to a hybrid variety would be that because it has been specifically and intentionally cross-pollinated, they're usually more hardy. They're usually more disease resistant. They're usually more productive. And that's a lot to celebrate in a vegetable, especially if you're growing for production. If you are just kind of a hobby gardener and you just like to have a few tomatoes to slice up in your salad throughout the summer, then I don't really see any loss of growing heirloom and maybe producing less. If you are truly trying to stock up your shelves and can and produce a lot of your own food or replace a lot of grocery store food or whatever, you can definitely do that with heirloom. Do not be confused. You can do that with heirloom. But hybrids are going to be more productive, more disease resistant, and so I think there is a place for them. If ultimately you want to grow a lot of food, then you don't want to totally discount growing any hybrid varieties. But please, I know there are people out there who are producing tons of food with heirloom, so I'm not saying that you can't do that. It's just you have to figure out what in your climate is going to do well, and every climate has its own troubles and heartaches of the curse that they have to fight against. And so all I'm saying is that sometimes it is worth the trouble of growing hybrids. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of what I do. This year, I will have a mix of heirloom and hybrid varieties in my garden. Not of everything though, and it's because I don't need a hybrid of everything. Guys, no matter what I grow of zucchini, I'm always going to be overrun with it. I grew heirloom zucchinis. Nobody needs to grow a hybrid. I mean, maybe some people have troubles with them. I don't want to discount anybody's troubles. Sometimes you just have bad years. But zucchinis and cucumbers and things like that, guys, you get overrun with them usually. And so, for me, I don't see a need to have a hybrid variety of those. I'm not saying there aren't probably... I'm sure there are people who could think of tons of reasons to have a hybrid version of those. For me, personally, I just don't need them. So I'm going to grow heirloom in a lot of those. The hybrids, and specifically in my mind, that I am going to be growing, my corn is going to be a hybrid. It's still non-GMO organic corn that I'm growing in the garden, but I'm also going to be growing some hybrid tomatoes. I'm also growing heirloom tomatoes as well. I always want to grow heirloom so I can continue to try and save those seeds, even if they get a little disrupted with cross-pollinating. I still think that's still going to be a safe way of saving seeds. But I want to produce a lot of food for our family, and so I want to grow hybrid as well. So I'm growing a mix of those for tomatoes because I want to produce sauce, I want to produce salsa, I want to produce diced tomatoes. I want a lot of tomatoes, and so I want to grow hybrid so that I can be overrun with tomatoes and have to can tons of them. That's what I'm looking for. Ultimately, I want to grow my own food in a big way, in a big portion. I'm not in a place where I can grow even more and grow a huge percentage of our food, but I want to grow a ton of food for us. And so for me, I like the mix of having heirloom that I feel like I can rely on and just feel a little bit better, like I'm picking out something that I know I'll like, that I can save and count on, but also having some hybrids so that I know that I can hopefully, Lord willing, get really good, productive, disease-resistant plants. I'm also doing that with peppers, honestly, because I'm just tired of my California wonders not really being all that wonderful. It's probably something I'm doing, but I'm going to give hybrids a chance this year for peppers. I'm also continuing to grow heirloom varieties that I grew last year. And guys, I had an heirloom variety of peppers I grew last year that overwhelmed me and just did so good and was so productive. And I have tons of bags of diced peppers in my freezer that I'm using still. So I'm not saying that heirloom can't give you tons of production. It can. It just, depending on where you are and the struggles you might have, blight or, different diseases that can hit your crops and things like that, you might just find that hybrids are worth it. The climate in Mississippi is just going to be different than upstate New York. It just is. And so you're going to have different troubles, and you might find that you're going to want to grow certain hybrids for certain varieties of certain vegetables that you want a ton of. But I don't want you guys to be afraid of going into hybrids and using them. Some people don't like them because they are afraid that they're genetically modified in an unnatural way, and I understand how that misconception can happen. I just don't want people to be afraid. Now, you have the freedom to choose whether you want hybrids or heirlooms or whatever, but I think it's important to just have that sense of calmness to know, okay, I don't want GMO, these are not GMO. Also, as I mentioned in the last video about planting your garden, GMO seeds are not available to you. They're not. And people don't always believe this, but those are only sold to commercial growers. They are highly regulated in America. You're not going to go into Home Depot, you're not going to order seeds online and get GMO seeds. There's a misunderstanding even about that, but also a misunderstanding that hybrids are GMOs, and they're not. So you can have that peace of mind. If you want to grow a hybrid or you see something that you like that's hybrid, don't be afraid of it. It's not a GMO seed, and it might give you a higher yield and be hardier. But also, don't make that afraid of heirlooms. I'm not saying that your heirloom varieties are just going to wither away in 2 days and not give you any vegetables. They still can be great producers. If I was going to grow all exclusive heirloom varieties, and it doesn't mean I shouldn't do this even now because I do mostly grow heirloom varieties, it's good to ask around or to know if somebody around you has been planting heirloom varieties and saving those seeds for decades, and get your hands on those seeds. I did last year from a friend, those plants can learn to adapt to those environments and even be stronger and hardier because you got them locally. So there's such benefits to both kinds, and I love heirloom seeds. I'm always going to be for heirloom seeds, but I'm not anti-hybrid seeds either, and I don't want you to be either. I hope that this video will kind of help you see that there's not much to be afraid of. Well, guys, stay tuned for a video soon, and I'll share with you what we are growing in our garden this year and how we're going to go about that, and kind of give you more of a mix of, you can see what hybrids and what heirlooms we're growing, and maybe give you some ideas on what you want to grow in your garden. This maybe inspire you as well. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helps you, I hope it informs you, and I hope that you feel a little more educated and informed about this topic, and hopefully it'll help you plan your garden even better. And guys, I hope that if you're gardening this year, that you have such a blessed year, and that your gardens are huge and you are overrun with your vegetables. And I hope we are too. So guys, until next time, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like the video, please share it with your friends and your family, please subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support us in what we're doing and creating this content for you. And until next time, we'll see you soon.